name is Paul Skinner, Paulskinner. Originally from Northeast Ohio. Joined the Air Force in 1972. Went to Texas at my first base, and went to Thailand from there, Udon Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, which is in northern eastern Thailand. I was an aircraft mechanic on the F-4 Phantom jets over there. Was stationed there over a year, and most everyone went over there for 12 months. A lot of people went over there.
As you see it, what is the problem that we're trying to solve
The
here?
problem we're having that they were spraying Agent Orange, tactical herbicides, I should say, all around the perimeter of the base. And the VA has this rule that unless you were a security policeman and walked the perimeter, you weren't exposed. They don't take, in fact, that the wind blows, jet flows, everything, you know. And they have this 500 drift zone rule or something like that, you know. So a lot of guys that are getting turned down 3, 4, 5 denials, you know, all of a sudden they're dead, you know, they're dying from this stuff. And the VA, you know, we can't get no support from the politicians, you know, especially in Ohio. We have 16 congressmen, 3 have only supported us out of the 16.
Well, let me back up just a little bit. So I know that Agent Orange is like a ticking time bomb in the human body. Yet
Right.
killed vegetation almost
It
instantly.
does.
But in the human body, it takes practically a whole generation, decades and decades to come about. How have you been affected by that?
A year ago, October, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. That's on the list of Agent Orange list, what causes, you know. So I have no family history of prostate cancer on either side, my father's side or mother's side. You know, I'm currently went through 2 surgeries. I have another biopsy that I have to do coming up for next year, and then of course you go through them every 3-month blood testing, you know.
But for every one of you, there has got to be hundreds, if
Oh
not
yes,
thousands of
a
other
lot of
servicemen.
prostate cancer, heart problems, diabetes is the big one that it causes. I'm pre-diabetes also, heart ischemia.
So they're denying coverage, denying, actually not admitting that there's a responsibility. You would have had to have been a security guard out on the perimeter?
Basically, yes. The security police, you know, they walk the perimeters and stuff. Our flight line was, and they have secondary defense where they sprayed also, which was right next to our flight line. But the VA doesn't recognize that. They have stick to security policemen, you know.
At the time, did you know you were being exposed to something that could kill you?
No, we didn't realize that they sprayed in Thailand until, I'm thinking, 2010 or 2011 they come out and admitted, the VA admitted that they used tactical herbicides in Thailand.
But you're not covered.
No.
How could that be?
VA rules. They've had Senator Boozman went to the VA committee, and he's the one who's supporting this bill, HR 2201 S1381. And we had Operation Orange Envelope where we sent thousands and over 6,000 letters in orange envelopes and orange stationery to President on down. And he went to them and asked why, you know, you need to change this. And we still haven't got no
Couple of other
coverage.
questions. If you had served in Vietnam, you would be covered.
Yes, automatically.
If you had been a security officer on the perimeter,
Yes.
you would be covered.
Right.
How is this fair?
That's what we're saying. It's been over 45 to 50 years for most people now, and they're just trying to put us on the wayside. We always said we were young and sprayed, now we're old and being betrayed. So
Say that again.
we were young and sprayed, and now we're old and being betrayed.
How does that make you feel?
Not very good. There's a lot of people that have terminal cancers that are dying, you know. So their wife, what happens when they pass away, their wife can still do the claim, but she has to start all over again.
So that's more years of paperwork.
Right. And now, average claim, I think, is taken 5 to 10 years to get approved. So is what I seen on the thing.
And so that I'm clear, when I say people are being denied, they're being denied coverage. First off, the
Being
federal
on
government-
benefits.
Right, you're out of benefits.
Right.
Could you go to the VA and have all your operations or anybody?
Well, I'm fortunate because I'm retired Air Force,
Okay, so you're lucky.
so I do
But what if
have.
somebody is not?
They
did
still
their
can go to
time.
VA and get treatment, but the treatment we're talking about is benefits from the VA. A lot of, you know, that they have to pay for what they did. You know, I'm trying to. We're looking for coverage from the VA 100%. They have certain percentages that they give you, the disability. You know.
Two other questions. So what happens next? And I'll ask Bob about this. What happens next? You're continuing this campaign to try and get Ohio's members of the Senate.
Really all congressmen across the country, senators across the country. Congressman Turner is, I got him to co-sponsor us. October 9th, he signed on to be our co-sponsor.
Just a month ago?
Yes, Congressman Turner did.
Okay, that's
And
good
we
for
were
him.
very happy.
How about other people?
I sent letters out to all the congressmen and the 2 senators that we have. The 2 senators took them like 2 months to even reply back to me.
Wow. Let me close by asking, so if they were here, the Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman were here, what would you tell them?
Ask them why. I would say, why? What do you got against co-sponsoring a bill so we can get it passed? There's no reason why, you know, to co-sponsor it. I've seen Rob Portman making statements saying, "Oh well, the VA is fair in the rules right now for the Agent Orange veterans."
Doesn't sound very fair.
No.
Especially on Veterans Day. I think about it all the time, is that I think the general public would just assume that since the feds have been discussing this off and on for, 50 years?
Yeah.
They would have gotten it right by now?
Well, now you got another set of veterans from the Iraq-Afghanistan war that were exposed to the fire pits. They're going through the same thing now too.
I think sometimes the feds, members of Congress, get you all confused. They go, oh, we solved that problem. We passed a law, we passed a bill, we passed a plan.
I think the American people need to start thinking about replacing a lot of these people, truthfully. Been in there too long.
But you're talking about the voters now.
Yes.
If they want to show their support for you, they would get behind this.
Right to the congressman to support Thailand veterans of the Vietnam era, you know, and support our bills, H.R. 2201 and Senate S1381.
Okay.
I joined in December 1965. I had gotten out for 2 years and went to school. I'd been in the reserves and I went back in. I had served 25 years and retired in November 1990.
So you were in for 2 and came out. Why did you?
No, I had been in for 12 years. I'd
12,
gotten out
okay.
for 2 years to pursue my degree so I could
Okay.
apply for OTS, Officers Training School.
When were you in Thailand?
I arrived in September of 1971. and I departed in September of 1972. I have documentation in official documents that state that they sprayed chemical herbicides. The security police did that. They are not trained to spray herbicides.
In a nutshell, the problem that we're trying to get to is the VA just will not recognize a group of veterans for their injuries. Is that correct?
In a sense, they have what they call special consideration for Thailand-based veterans, but you have to go through a bunch of hoops. If you were security police, it's a little more automatic. If you were not security police, you had to be a certain career field. And they have a list of some mechanics and some radar people that went around fixing radar areas. Well, most of the bases were very small. They were fighter bases. We just did an analysis of non-com phenom, NKP, and 72% of that base was contaminated. Utapao had a 17-mile perimeter, so we were a much larger base. But there is also what's called the secondary defense, which was the area surrounding the flight line, the ramps, parking ramps, the taxiways, and the hangars. And when you take that into consideration, quite a bit of Utapao, where I was stationed, bomber base, that was also contaminated. However, that has not been recognized by the Veterans Benefit Administration, although the VBA Agent Orange desk manager, Jim Samsel, identified it in the 6 March 2017 Advisory Committee for Disability Compensation that there was a secondary defense, and he talks about it. He's referring to a Project Checo report that's a comprehensive historical evaluation of current operations, and that's what most veterans have to help submit. We shouldn't have to do that. The VA has that. They have probably hundreds of thousands of copies of those from us constantly submitting that. As I said, they should have a computer database that simply goes in, types in you're at such base, it was a small fighter base, and you were in such a field. This person was approved, therefore it makes sense that you should be approved. But instead, each claim is looked at independently, and it takes a lot of time to do that. As a former manpower officer who did manpower studies, I would say that they're gaming the system, and what they do is they get a claim in, they review it, then they send out for information, then they send out for more information, then they deny it, and they give you the chance to appeal it. Well, that's a claim that you still get credit for workload, but by sending it out, you still have it on your desk, so you're not given more workload. And then you get the responses from the veterans, and you're looking at it, but then you say, well, gee, I need some more information. Now, point in fact, I submitted a 140-page claim, and in it, I had a copy of my Airman Performance Report that clearly stated I worked at the 2-story modular dorm, and I showed her on the map where that was located, which was right adjacent to the outer perimeter. And she said, oh, that was in the claim? She had never read the claim, but she was going to deny it. Well, I was approved, but I was lucky because I know how to research, I know how to write. But when you take the vast number of people that should be approved and are not approved, and you look at their background, I'm not saying anything negative about them. I'm just saying they're not as knowledgeable on the ways to research and put their claims together. But the VA has a duty to assist, and they're not assisting. Rather, they're resisting.
Why is that? Why have they adopted this policy?
There are hidden agendas in management in the government. When I was in the Air Force and did studies, we had people that wanted to have engineers, because if you had an engineer, that could help you get a higher rating. Well, in the VA, the more employees you have, the higher your rating. So they build these bureaucracies, they have the workload come in, they send it out, deny it. That's more workload. It keeps coming back and back and back.
So in other words, there's a lot going on all at
It's a
once.
bureaucracy building.
Can I turn that off?
Am I able to hit this real quick? Which button is that? Oh,
It'll take a second for it to turn off. I apologize.
no, that's okay.
I didn't realize I had it
That's
on.
really nifty. In the, okay, so you're trying to get this bill passed, which would enable those people to get their benefits.
For the most part, it will take care of the situation, although it too has some flaws. There is that duty-only exposure, and the current bill that's going through both the House and the Senate. They removed the requirement you had to be on the outer perimeter. They removed the requirement that you had to be certain career fields, but they do not remove the requirement of duty-only exposure. The VA says that herbicides can only contaminate those people that are on duty. We slept in wooden hooches that were screened. We slept in concrete dorms and modular dorms that had open windows. We didn't have air conditioning, we had fans. And when we were in those, it just circulated the contaminated air. Well, we were contaminated, at Utapau at least, by our own security police because they sprayed. Security police aren't trained to spray.
Do you have a guesstimation of the number of people who served in Thailand who would be eligible under the
There's
bills?
350,000 veterans that have served in Thailand. That's a rough estimate. What one has to take into account is that record keeping wasn't very accurate, and a flight crew down at Guam or in Okinawa that came in and were TDY, temporary duty, they weren't always counted. So that 350 could be a low estimate.
So it was a very transient situation. Why is the Congress resistant? What difference would it make to them?
That's a good question. Well, why are they slow in recognizing it? As I wrote, The Forgotten and Ignored Veteran, we just are in that group that is not being attention paid to. You had the burn pit Afghan and Middle East folks right now. You have the Blue Water Navy, and they just don't seem to understand. But you also have to recognize that the millennials that work in the congressman's office, they weren't born when we were in Thailand. So when you talk to one of them and you say Thailand, they don't even know where it is on the map. And some of them don't even know there was a Vietnam War.
It's got to be pretty disappointing. As a person who spent the majority of virtually all of your adult life in service, thank you for doing that. What was your reaction when you finally stepped back and got a look at this and figured out what's going on? How do you deal with that?
Well, I had applied initially for exposure in Vietnam because I had gone TUI verbal orders. But because they were verbal and I hadn't submitted the paperwork to be reimbursed, I was denied. I walked away from it because I had a heart attack. I was working on my doctorate, doing my dissertation. So I walked away for a while. Then I got talking to some veterans and got on Facebook, and I learned a little bit more. So then I did the research for my book, and then I did the research for my claim. And yes, I've been approved today, fortunately, but I'm trying to assist other veterans who are not being approved and who deserve that. They earned it by answering the call of this nation. Now, as Paul said, we were young and sprayed, and now we're old and betrayed. And there's a phrase that many use, deny until we die. And that's a common theme among the different veterans pages.
Two other questions. What are you now telling other members of Congress? I know Mike Turner signed on to your bill. What are you telling them now? They
There was
talk a good game about supporting veterans.
There was an Agent Orange campaign, well, it's still in force, where one veteran recommended it and two others. Jay Cole from Indiana, he's former Air Force, and then Joseph Wilson, Army out of Colorado, have pursued this Agent Orange campaign, and they've, at last count, it was over 6,000, and that was also identified in one of the hearings by Senator Bozeman. Held up one of the envelopes and said, "Gentlemen, we've gotten these envelopes. We need to do something," but for some reason they're just not. Now, as I told you, there was a briefing that I conducted to the attorney on the subcommittee for the House of Representatives, Veterans Disabilities, and she acknowledged that Utapau had a secondary defense, primary defense, and that we were contaminated. But she informed us that we do not have the support of the VFW, the American Legion, or some of the others, and that we needed to get that, and we needed to do more because there's a $200 million per year or $20 billion over a 10-year period tax cost, and they just don't have the money.
This is a money thing. I hate the fact that
Basically.
it comes down to that. And then what would you tell? Probably the odds are that somebody, whether it's online or over the air, or they hear about it from our story, somebody's going to have an uncle or a brother or a cousin, or maybe it's still them, who may be affected by this. What would you tell them? And so many people we meet, they're fed up with the VA. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They have walked away and forgotten their claim years ago.
Well, what we will always see out on Facebook is ask your relatives, ask your friends, neighbors, and so on to write their congressman, to contact their congressman. I called last week both senators of Ohio, Portman and Brown, and I told them about this interview. And I said, I will be identifying that they have not co-sponsored. I would recommend strongly that one of their representatives call me. I didn't receive a phone call.
You're still waiting for a call.
No, I stopped waiting. I'm moving on.
But moving forward, at the end of our story, I'm going to say you're not giving up. Is my question. You're not going to give up.
I have stage 4 terminal cancer, and I will fight this until I can't. I have a FOIA request into the VA asking for what academic, scientific research and what individuals developed a duty-only exposure. That's absurd. Mm-hmm. Herbicides cannot tell the difference between you, a young man, and me, an old man. Cannot tell the difference between that female attorney I briefed and me. Can't tell the difference between on duty and off duty. And I submitted that in February. I'm still waiting for an answer. It was given to me incomplete. I appealed it, and they're working on it. I talked to the new person. She's a nice lady. She's trying to get it answered. But management at a higher level wants to look at the answer a little more, because I believe they don't have an answer.
It just might wait you out.
I gave you a document of a letter that the VA uses, an Air Force letter that says that there was no Agent Orange in Thailand. They were commercial herbicides. I submitted a FOIA request to the Air Force. I have their response. That letter contains false information. I wrote to the Secretary of the Air Force and asked for the letter to be rescinded. I got a response from the History Office saying they stand by the letter. I wrote to the Secretary of the VA and asked him to stop using the letter, and I got a response from the VBA, and it said we care for our veterans.
You question that now?
I
You continue
question
to
everything
question
about
that.
it.
How do you take that? This is my final question. How do you deal with that? This is the country that probably at one time thought was going to take care of you.
Well, I am being taken care of because I was able to write my claim 140 pages. And because I had the documentation. But there are far too many veterans that do not. And the VA is not assisting them. They could very well develop a simple computer system that would link information, but instead, every claim is looked at independently, most often by what I believe are incompetent people, and they just keep the paperwork flowing. It's called job security.